Hi everyone, it's Denise from Dobby Books. So I didn't have to go to work today. I thought I got my Sundays mixed up. I'm covering for someone. I thought it was today. It's actually next week. So that's good. I've got I've got time, and I want to go over what I finished reading, what I'm currently reading, and some book acquisitions that I got over the week. And I want to add to that one book from a pile of books that I need to pick for my next reading to add to what my current reading is. So, first, let me show you what I finished reading. The first one I finished reading was the novella Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, this was a good paranormal. I enjoyed it. It had me fascinated as I was reading through it. But it wasn't what I expected. I couldn't tell me from the title of the book and the name of the author that this would be a book um, coming from the voice of a Native American, I'd say middle schooler. And many of the occurrences that happen in this paranormal story are around that theme of Native American traditions and religious beliefs. This family was living on the reservation, but the single mother managed to move them out of the reservation. And then there were reasons that she had done that. So we have our protagonist, and we have his little brother Dino, and then there's their mom. And as I read in the summary last week, what's his name again? Of course, I forget so quickly. Junior. They just call him Junior. How hard is that to remember? Junior is the oldest boy. He has a little brother named Dino. Dino has some intellectual and physical challenges. And lately he's been having seizures, which is a new thing. And one night, by the way, Junior tends to sleepwalk. So the beginning of the story is him waking up, standing in his family room, staring out the window. And it's in that same evening that he happens to look over and he sees his dead father crossing the family room and going down the hallway. And that's how that adventure begins. The thing with Junior is because his father's dead, he's got a wonderful mother, but she has to work so hard to keep a roof over their head and put food on the table. And she has a good connection with Junior and with Dino. Great mom, great mom. Dino, it's like he's the only one that knows what's happening. He can't tell his mother, I've seen dad, right? And he has his reasons for doing that. And obviously he can't tell Dino. And also on top of that, but he's carrying that experience on his shoulders. It's bringing up questions, and his sort of one of those questions is, what is dad doing here? What's he trying to tell us? And also, Dino goes on a bus in the morning to go to school, but he's getting bullied by the kids. Like he's being tossed around back and forth. And with his seizures happening, Junior, he's on the warpath now, right? He's like, okay, you guys mess with my brother, and that's it. I'm reading you the riot act, and it's not going to be a lot of fun. So he's got that burden that he's carrying. And he's seeing his dad at night, and he can't tell his mother. And he's having to deal with school, and he's getting all distracted with everything at home. And as time progresses, and he continues to see his dad, and he's dealing with this neighbor next door, it's like it's putting more on his plate. But on top of that, what happens is he's starting to figure out what it is his dad is doing when he comes to the house in the evening while everyone's sleeping. And Junior has got to get all of this taken care of without alarming his mother, while keeping his little brother Dino safe, and just dealing with all these supernatural occurrences. And it was a good story. It was an interesting story. I found myself not wanting to put it down. And it's a short story. It's just a novella. this is something, yeah, I would definitely tell someone, read it. I think you'll like it. In some parts, I say in the end, let's say in the end, as the story concluded, not what I expected, but I wasn't disappointed, if that makes any sense. Okay, so Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. And then the next one I finished was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. And if you remember me talking about this, this is about another middle schooler in the UK whose mother's been diagnosed with cancer and she's going through her chemo treatments. And his father is pretty much estranged. You know, he's married, he's moved on, he hardly ever sees his son. He's moved to the United States, so that distance doesn't make it easy for his father to visit. But his father, you know, he could call, right? He's not really doing that either. So this kid has I'm trying to think of what his Connor. That's it. Connor is dealing with that estrangement from his father because you know he'd like a relationship with his dad, but he has put himself on the defensive. He's sort of stepping back and saying, okay, well, let's see what you do. Let's see if I can trust you. So there's that issue. On top of that, the fear, quite frankly, of losing his mother and how he is trying in his own way to deal with this. And in the meantime, the tree that is way up on a hill, it's a yew tree that's way up on a hill behind their house, the tract that they live on in a cemetery, apparently comes to life and comes to visit him in the evening. And what the tree tells him is, I have to tell you 3 stories, and then you have to tell me the last one, and you have to tell me your truth. And what the tree is trying to help him do, is trying to help Connor do, is to confront what he is facing in his life, an extremely difficult time for a child to go through. There are no siblings mentioned in the story. I'm assuming he is the only child. He doesn't really have his father. He only really has his mother. And he's facing the possibility of losing her. And his grandmother, his mother's mother, is just a very detached, for me as an adult, I would find her very annoying and I would just avoid her. But he can't. He can't, because she's his grandmother and he's not an adult yet. And because his mother is so sick, the grandmother has to come over and help the mom and look after him. And she's just very I don't know how to explain it. If my own mother or my mother-in-law behaved toward my own children like this, I'd have some issues with her. I'd be talking with her and saying, you're dealing with human beings here. You need to address them by their name, and you need to be sensitive to what it is they're thinking and feeling, that kind of thing. This grandmother doesn't seem to be too concerned with those sort of things. So she's not someone he can turn to, so he's pretty much alone in his quest, much like Junior is in his other quest. And you see how beautifully the tree gradually draws him out and helps him to acknowledge what he's feeling and what he's thinking, and eventually to say the words. It is a moving story. I mean, I'm thinking of it now, and it just really, it hits you in a very sensitive area. It really is a beautiful story. I'm glad I read this book. A lot of middle grade books, of course, have, well, this is YA as well, have that protagonist in there where there's some aspect of a parent not being there or supervision not being present. So that allows our heroes of the story to sort of go on an adventure. And in this case, it's an adventure, but it's an adventure that brings about healing, yes, gosh, I really struggle for words on this one. It's I wouldn't say it's a light read because of the emotions that can be drawn out of it, but it really is beautifully done. The author has found a way to address an issue that some children face in a way that I guess you could say softens it a little bit so that they're able to walk through this more gently. That's the visual that I got on this as I was reading this book. So, A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. It says it was inspired by an idea from Stoban Dowd. I know I'm not pronouncing the name correctly, but Stoban Dowd was the original author, if you will. She had the idea of this story, but then she passed away. And the author, Patrick, took up the story and just sort of fleshed it out for this author. And it was illustrated by Jim Kay, and Jim Kay is the same author who illustrated the Harry Potter series. Good book, great book. That's what I finally finished this week. What I am reading right now is the book entitled The Man Who Could Move Clouds. So this is another paranormal story. This is nonfiction. Okay. I just love paranormal stories. Even when they're fiction, I like them. But when they're when they're nonfiction, I get so much more excited to read them. And in this, I'm going to take off my glasses and switch them out here. Okay. In this story, the author Ingrid Rojas Contreras, she talks about how her grandfather and the generations before him, the men, were sensitives, and they worked as curanderos in Colombia, in the town of Colombia. And that the author's mother one day, when she was a child, had fallen down a well and was knocked out. And after they pulled her out of the well, she went through a recovery time where she had amnesia. And after she had that experience of amnesia, her sensitivities, that other sense that we have, that sixth sense, if you will, was awakened. So she was the first person in all these generations to be a female with this gift. And there's a story about the author's mother, when she was still in her own mother's womb, about a message that the father got. Absolutely insane, crazy stuff going on. He tried to prevent the child from being born, and there's just this huge, crazy scene in that one. But the author's mother now had that gift, so she worked as a curandera. They eventually left Colombia because of the civil unrest that was going on. By the way, that civil unrest lasted 60 years. And I believe they moved away in the 90s. And now her daughter, later on in her life, young adults, what I'd say, in her 20s, fell off her bike, hit her head, suffered with amnesia as well. And she too had that sixth sense of hers awakened. And she talks about, in the beginning of the story, so I still am pretty much at the very beginning of the story. In this part of the book, she talks about, there were several, her mother, the author's mother, has several siblings. And the author and her mother and some of her mother's sisters are all having the same dream. It's not unusual if the author has that dream, or maybe her mother will also have the dream, but for the aunts to start having these dreams as well, and it's the same one, that they knew something unusual was going on. And in that dream, the author's grandfather, the curandero, wants them, or they seem, this is the message they're getting, that Grandpa wants us to go to his grave and disinter his remains, but we don't know what he wants us to do with them. So they've all agreed that they're going to go back to Colombia, to their grandfather's gravesite, to disinter him. But they still haven't figured out if they're just going to do this, clandestinely at night, and hopefully they'll get away with it, or whether they're going to pay the proper authorities to do this properly. But they're having the conversations now. If we do it this way, how are we going to do this? And what about this? And what about that? Okay, if we don't do it this way, it's really expensive. And they're going back and forth on it. So I'm very intrigued to see what the heck's going to happen. And I know this is only going to be one of several other incidences that she's going to talk about in this book. So it's all very interesting. And it does weave in and out the present, and then to the past, and then to the present, and then to the past. So you're getting that full story filled out for you as you go along. So I'm enjoying this very much. The Man Who Could Move Clouds by Ingrid Rojas Contreras. Good book. Now, my face itches. Okay. The next ones I want to show you are, I want to add a book to this one. So right now I'm just reading this one, and I know for Pride Month I've chose 3 books. I doubt I will get all 3 of them done, but the 3 that I chose are one by James Baldwin, Giovanni's Room, another one by George Johnson, All Boys Aren't Blue, which is actually a memoir, and then the new book by Brian Selznick entitled Run Away With Me, which I think is just so cool because I love the way that Brian Selznick presents his stories. If you can see here the dark part, those are his illustrations, which he blends in with the text. It's just fantastic. But I need to choose one of these 3 books at the very least to add to my reading for the week, so I can read something for Pride Month. If I can get 2 of these 3 done, I'll be happy. Okay. Now, new books I got. I went to my library sale yesterday. I didn't go there for very long. I actually went there hoping I could find some books written about the Middle Ages or written during the Middle Ages. The one that I really wanted to find were the 2 Lives of Charlemagne. For some reason, that was really on my mind, and I really wanted to get that one. But I was looking for other books that I had. I had a little list, and I wasn't, gosh, there were a lot of people there yesterday. It was unusually crowded. And I just love the ones where I say, excuse me, behind you, we need to get behind them. And there's like no response. They just stand there in the middle of the aisle, and you're like, oh. So you just go behind them. And if you bump into them, oh well. Anyway, these are the books I found. Get this. I found The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende. I wasn't looking for this. I have the folio edition. But as you know, my folio editions are the looky no touchies. They're very pretty books. And you can sort of look through them for the lovely illustrations and maybe to admire the craftsmanship. But that's not a book that's out there for reading. It's just favorites that I love because not only are they favorites, but they've formatted it in a manner that I think the story deserves. So there we go. But I'm so happy now because I'm going to get to read The Never-Ending Story, and I can hold the book like this, or I can bend back the cover, and it doesn't matter. So that's good, The Never-Ending Story. And then the next one I found, so I did find something written about the Middle Ages, and this one is by Thomas Asbridge, The Crusades, The Authoritative History of the War for the Holy Land. A little bit interesting, a little bit thick. But I think I'm going to move this over to my medieval studies, and I'll put it in that stack. And when and if I read it, then I will cover it. I'll review it for you in my updates on my medieval studies. And then another book I found, I hope I didn't show this to you already. I went to the Open Book, which is a small chain of stores, privately owned. There's a few here in California. I went to my local one just because it was next door to where the other store I was going to. And I said, well, let me peruse the history section and see if I find anything Middle Ages. I didn't. But I found this by Philip Pullman, Fairy Tales from the Brothers Grimm, a new English version. I didn't even know that the author had written this book, that he had published this book. And it's in great condition. It's got the deckled edges. It's got French flaps. And it's a Penguin Classics Deluxe Edition. I didn't even know this existed. So here was a little bonus that I got, and I think this cost me, I don't know, $4, $5. Not bad. it's in wonderful condition. I don't even know if the original owner even read the book. So yay, here's a little bonus. Now, when I was back at the library sale, trying to look in the classics section, it could be hard because everything is double stacked, right? So you have to get the tall stack that's blocking the stack behind it, and you have to hold it like this and carefully lean it back, look at the books behind it, and then put it back. So this is a skill you develop over time. And as I was doing that, and I put one little stack back, and I was looking over here, and this on this particular shelf that I was at, the whole stack to the far left came tumbling down. I don't know. I didn't bump into it. I hadn't moved any books next to it. It just came tumbling down. I was like, no. So I put the stack back up. I was putting it back together. And as I'm restacking it so I can put it back on the shelf, guess what I found? The Two Lives of Charlemagne. Isn't that crazy? That was like the book that was on my mind that I thought maybe I could find there. And it's the one that, and it wasn't even on the right shelf. I love these stories. We've all heard these stories where it's just really weird. It's either one book that falls off the shelf and it's this really significant thing, about the book for them. And in my case, it was this book on the wrong shelf that fell down off the shelf with a stack of books that I didn't touch. So, yay. I found the book I was looking for, and I'm very excited. So there we go. I acquired 4 books this week, and they were all library sales or used bookstores, and I got wonderful deals. I think in total on all of these, I spent less than $10. So I did good, did great. And those are my books for the week. Yep, I think that's it. All right, everybody. I will talk to you in just a few days. Thanks for hanging out with me. Take care. I love you all. Bye-bye.